In advance of his trip to the UK, Xi Jinping gave the written interview to Reuters news agency. He answered questions on ties with the UK and the EU, and on financial cooperation and climate change. Guy Falconbridge, the head of the Reuters UK bureau, says he was impressed by what he read.
I thought the answers were actually very clear and also very interesting. They weren't, as we would say in English, bureaucratic. They were quite clear and to the point. I also thought it was very interesting the way in which he described the Chinese economy, that he admitted that there were problems, but that that the Chinese government and the Chinese authorities were trying to deal with that.
The interview intrigued investment consultant James Stewart.
I think the image I have is an individual who is more than capable of developing and, to some extent, embracing China's position as the second and ultimately the largest economy in the world. This is a huge responsibility.
The former
We're live in London. You're looking at live pictures coming out of London, where Chinese President Xi Jinping will be received by the Queen there. This is, of course, President Xi Jinping's first state visit to the UK, and his is the first by a Chinese president in 10 years. President Xi Jinping will be received by the Queen at an official ceremonial welcome at the Royal Pavilion on Horse Guards Parade. Prime Minister David Cameron there. He will, of course, meet with President on multiple occasions during President Xi's trip, this time to the UK. British Prime Minister David Cameron will, of course, spend time with President Xi Jinping, both at 10 Downing Street and at the Prime Minister's country retreat. Earlier, speaking to China Central Television, David Cameron said that this was a golden era for both the UK and China, as both sides discover more potential for cooperation in the future. And again, if you're just joining us, these are live pictures coming out of London, where President Xi Jinping will be received by the Queen later today. Well, Professor Wang, we just mentioned that David Cameron has talked about this golden era between China and the UK. Help us understand why this is such a strategic time for bilateral relationship between China and the UK.
Well, I think opportunities and potential for cooperation are the two keywords to understand of the so-called golden era. For UK, the Chinese economy, number 2 in the world, dramatically changing the model from the export-oriented manufacturer to investment-driven, and also service, which I think the UK can have a lot of opportunity to cooperate with China. When you ask on the trade and the manufacturer, the relations with United States and Germany is more important. But when you more eyes on the service and One Belt, One Road, for example, the investment overseas,